Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 5 of the Stratocaster build, and in this episode we're going to get the neck pocket cut and also put everything together to see how well it fits. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It really doesn't. So we're pretty much there on this body. There's not a huge amount to do now. We've got all of the routing done for the pickups, the controls, the output, the tremolo, and all the body contours are done. So there's a fair old amount of work gone into it, but there is still one thing that needs to be achieved, and that is to cut this neck pocket. And luckily it's not a big problem because the fantastic set of templates that I'm using from Crimson come with a neck pocket template as well, so should be relatively straightforward. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to use a square to make sure that that's level with the end of the body. Just line it all up on the centre lines, and I'm going to draw in where the neck pocket's going to go, like that. However, I'm not going to just trust the template set. I'm pretty sure they are right, but you never know with these things. So I'm going to put that neck template in position. Get a clamp on it, and I'm going to stick the bridge in roughly in position. There's a fair bit of movement on that, but we can kind of get it central to there. And in theory, if we put a rule on there, we should be 25.5 inches from the nut slot to the saddles, unless I've got that bridge pushed all the way forward. And even then it's a little bit shy of where I'd like it to be, and it also leaves a nasty gap at the back of the bridge. So I think I need to do a little bit more investigation to see how this is all going to fit together. So I have been inside with my trusty measuring stick, and I've looked at both my Stratocasters. Luckily one's still in bits, so I was able to take quite a lot of measurements from it. And what I found is that something isn't quite right with this one, but it's only marginally out, and it can be made to kind of come back within range. And the problem I've got is with the neck set where it is, and the bridge in such a position that I don't have a big gap at the back, which I don't want. I really don't want that gap there. This saddle won't adjust far enough forward to get it to the scale length. And this one's quite important because the high E string is generally where you set up for your scale length. If you can set that exactly on the scale length, you can usually tweak the rest of them into intonation. So it's a little bit of a dilemma. Also, when this bridge is in the position I want it to be in, there's a little bit too much of a gap between the pick guard and the bridge. Now we probably can tweak that back a little bit just to accommodate for that. So we have a conundrum, we have a problem. It's not a massive one, and I'm pretty sure we can fix it. What I'm going to do is, I think looking at this, if I switch to metric for a little while, I want 647 for my scale length. 647.7, so we'll call it 648. And with that in its current position, we're at 651. So we're about 3 millimeters out. So if I can't move the bridge this way, I have to bring the nut this way, and as it's only 3 millimeters, I think we can do that. I think if we cut this neck pocket 1.5 millimeters further this way than we ordinarily would have done, we can then move the nut a little bit further forward as well, which means we'll have less of a gap between the final fret and the end of the fretboard, but it will only be 1.5 mil. So it's really, really marginal, and I don't think anyone will ever be able to tell you that that's the case. But taken together, moving the neck and the nut 1.5 millimeters each this way will move our scale over 3 mil and bring it exactly where we want it to be over this saddle. If I have to then tweak the bridge forward a tiny little bit, I can do that because there is a bit of a shadow line under there, so the gap won't be necessarily visible. But if we can get away without doing that, I'd be happier. So the upshot of all that is I'm going to take that off. I'm going to mark a line about 1.5 mil back from there. And then we're going to set our template back up on our centre lines. And we're going to remark that. I'm going to check that again, then we'll get it to the drill press, get the waste hogged out and get the router out. So that's the neck pocket cut, and I've just slipped this back in and it fits very nicely, so I'm happy with that. And also, if I now measure from the nut line, we're looking for 648 millimeters to the high E saddle, and we're just a little bit under that, which is what we actually want, because we want a little bit of movement inside of that. So that is actually pretty much spot on now, and I'm happy with that. However, it is not simply the case that you can adjust one part of the build and everything else is still going to slot into place. And I fully expected that I was going to have to do a little bit of jiggling around with the scratch plate now to make everything fit properly. And I've put the pots and the switch in, and I think this would have been the case whether I adjusted the neck pocket or not, because they don't fit. You might be able to see there I've marked a line for where the pig guard should fit with nothing on it, and then that line on the inside of it is where it actually comes to with the switch and the pots in place. It is the switch that's fouling the most, but this pot is also fouling ever so slightly. However, it's not the end of the world, it's not a disaster. There is actually a fair amount of material in this area. So what I intend to do is take a measurement between those two lines and reposition the template just a little bit further away than that measurement from the edge that we've already routed in, and just take out a tiny little bit more material to make sure that that all fits. And there we have everything kind of fitted together, and it's pretty close to that pencil line that I marked in. It's maybe 2mm out or something, but it fits pretty well around the bridge. Obviously we might need to jiggle things around ever so slightly, but there is kind of a bit of room for manoeuvre. So generally quite happy with that. It's been a little bit of a faff to get that all to fit, and you might think that this is like some kind of disaster, that the templates didn't work or I've measured something wrong. In reality, we're working with a set of templates, we're working with a set of components that aren't a kit. So they've all been sourced from separate places. They might all be just ever so slightly out from specifications from which the templates have been built. And when you add all of those minor adjustments together, what you'll end up with is some significant differences that needed to be accounted for. All in all, I don't think that's too bad. We've had to do a little bit of adjustment, and we've got something that looks very much Stratocaster-like. So I am genuinely happy with that. Obviously, none of this is final position yet. We need a neck before we can really start to establish that. But for the time being, we are where we need to be. The other issue we will have is that there is a slight overhang on the pick guard now, because effectively we've moved that neck pocket back a little bit. So at some point that will need to be adjusted. I'll just need to flush trim that with the router. But before I do that, I want the neck in position. I want everything where it needs to be so I can screw it all in place and I know it's exactly where I want it to be. But now that we've got all of this done, I think we are pretty much finished with the body for now. So that seems like a very good place to leave this episode. I'll be back in a couple of days' time when we'll break out that net blank and the piece of rosewood, and we'll start turning all of that into a neck. Until then, all the usuals: like if you've liked, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.